My name is Steve Henriksen, and I'm a curator of collections here, and I'm very delighted to introduce our featured speaker for this afternoon, Lani Hotch. She's Santos from Klukwan, Alaska. She was born in the Tlingit village of Klukwan in the mid-1950s, and she lives there today with her family and directs the Jilkaat Kwaan Heritage Center, a world-class center of learning and a repository for Klukwan's priceless artifacts. She's also a weaver and from a family of weavers that spans at least 4 generations, including her 2 daughters. She's committed to keeping the tradition alive in her community and has spent the last 30 years weaving her own work and providing learning opportunities for Klukwan. In the late 1980s, she was instrumental in the movement to revitalize raven's tail weaving in Southeast Alaska, and over the years, she's woven over 10 dance robes and developed 3 group weaving projects. Her work is included in several national and international museums and private collections, including this one, and you'll see her fine robe on display today. She has received several major awards for her work, including a Community Spirit Award from the First Peoples Fund in 2011, the Alaska Governor's Awards for the Arts in 2017, and a Native Arts and Culture Foundation Mentor Artist Apprenticeship Program Fellowship in 2017, and the USA Artist Fellowship in 2020. One of Lani's highest honors was being named a culture bearer by her tribe, the Jilkaat Indian Village, in 2017. Lani is one of the 3 indigenous weavers who served as curators for our exhibit, which opens to the public today after a long period of development, 30 years in fact. On behalf of the Alaska State Museum, thank you, Lani, for lending your formidable expertise and enthusiasm for this project. Gunesh Chish. Please welcome Lani Hotch.
Thank you, Steve. Is it all right if I take off my mask to speak so you can hear? Okay. As Steve said, I'm from Klukwan, Alaska, and for those of you who don't know, it's in the northern part of Southeast Alaska. You go up Lynn Canal, get to Haines, then you can take the highway up 22 miles and you'll be at Klukwan. The name Klukwan is actually 2 words in Tlingit, Kluk and on. And Kluk means ancient or eternal, and then on means village or city or town or land. So when you put those 2 words together, Klukwan, it's eternal village or ancient village. And that's a pretty contemporary picture of the village of Klukwan. There's some historic photos that are out there. Just some scenes around Klukwan. That's the main street there, the Jilkaat Range. Klukwan's also known for all the eagles, the bald eagles that we have in our area. Another, that's like right from in front of my house looking eastward on Jilkaat Avenue. So just dive right into Klukwan's legacy of weaving. You know, when Steve asked if I would help curate that, I just felt such a really keen responsibility to tell Klukwan's story, you know, the legacy of weaving that we have in Klukwan, and probably gave Steve some trouble sometimes. I'm very, you know, I just felt that I had to tell it, you know, from my unique perspective, having grown, you know, been born and grown up in that tradition. So I think it all worked out in the end. This picture here you see is I believe, taken in the Raven House in Klukwan. And you can see just the rich heritage that's a part of our community there. And, something that I'm very proud to be a part of. And my husband is actually the caretaker of both the Raven and the Whale House. Here, Jones, raise your hand so people could see you. And so I thought it was nice to include this picture. It just shows you that rich heritage. Now to dive right into our weavers. Everybody, I think, knows that the Jilkaat weaving came through the Tsimshian people. It wasn't invented by my ancestors in Klukwan. It was brought to Klukwan through this beaver apron. And I'm sorry I don't have a real good shot of that, but this beaver apron was brought to Klukwan through this Tsimshian woman who had the name Hayuas Tla. Maybe it was given to her, Flannat name. Because Tla, I think it means mother. I'm not sure what Hayuas means. But she married a Jilkaat man. She brought this beaver apron to Klukwan with her. And the Ganakhtadi women, that's the Raven clan in Klukwan, unraveled that beaver apron to see how it was made. And once they figured out how it was made, they started weaving the Jilkaat blankets. And then they taught their sisters-in-law. And my source for this is Jenny Flannat. She actually told this history at a weaving symposium in 1985 that was held at the Raven House in Haines, Alaska, which is just down the road from Klukwan. So by the mid-1800s, there were so many skilled and prolific weavers in Klukwan that the art form became known as Jilkaat blankets. And this picture that you see here, this is one of the Klukwan weavers, and her name was Clara, or sometimes she was called Clara Benson, and her Flannat name was Dane Klukwan. I've heard her name said by Jenny Flannat. She was married to Mr. John Benson, according to public records. I think I've found this information on the internet through, some of those sites where you can get all that lineage information. She lived most of her life in the Jilkaat Valley. Her husband, John, was a leader in the Presbyterian Church and the Alaska Native Brotherhood. Clara was of the Ganakhtadi clan, and that's my husband's clan. And she was well known for her weaving ability. I don't know how many times I heard her name mentioned when I was learning to weave, in Klukwan. Mrs. Benson, they called her. Never used her first name really, just Mrs. Benson. I don't have a record of which Jilkaat robes were woven by Clara, although Jenny Flannat mentions Mrs. Benson as one of her weaving teachers. And I had the distinct privilege of wearing one of Mrs. Benson's tunics in the photo to the right. So I didn't just put that picture in there to promote myself, but I just needed a picture of one of her weavings. And so when we were at Celebration 2018, I was asked if I would want to wear that. Well, who could turn that down? But it was a real privilege to wear that. And I'll maybe tell a little bit more a little later on that. So Jilkaat weavers and their weavings. Another famous weaver that came from Klukwan was Florence Shotridge Katwachsene. She was, I believe, of the Klukwan clan. And she was married to Lewis Shotridge, who was from Klukwan. And they worked for the Pennsylvania University Museum of Archaeology and Anthropology. And in 1905, she demonstrated Jilkaat weaving at the Lewis and Clark Centennial Exposition in Portland. And so there you see, I don't know why she's wearing a Plains Indian outfit, but I think it was because of this exposition, but that's certainly not traditional Flannat dress that she's wearing there. But she's standing in front of the weaving that's pictured here. And that's a copper's robe too, but it has a really different layout than the one that just came from the Peabody Museum. Another weaver maybe that isn't quite so famous as Clara Benson and Florence Shotridge, but Annie Claney, who was she was the ancestor or the grandmother of Evelyn Hotch. Some of you may know Evelyn. She's been in Alaska Native Sisterhood for many, many years. She's passed on now, but that was her grandmother, her mother's mother, I think. Annie Jack Claney was born in Sitka. She was one of 13 children born to Sitka Jack of the Coho Fluknachadi clan and Martha Jack of the Eagle Kagwantan clan. Annie, like her mother, was of the Eagle Nest House, Chak Kudihit, in Sitka, but she lived much of her life in Klukwan and was married to Gus Claney, who was, I think, the last caretaker who actually lived in the frog house, the Klukwan frog house. Annie was skilled both at sewing skins, and she earned a reputation as a skilled Jilkaat weaver. A number of her weavings are well known. For example, this herring rock Jilkaat blanket, which is, I think, owned by the Kiksadi clan in Sitka. And it was a place that the Kiksadi went to gather their herring. I guess the herring, the waves would wash over that rock, wash the herring over, and it would be a good place to gather it. And so I love that. I love that concept of weaving something that represents a place. And I've done that myself. At the end, I'll show you a slide of some of my weavings, and you'll get to see the Berners Bay weaving. But Annie was another Klukwan weaver, very skilled, very talented. And this is Santos, which was my great-great-grandmother, and I'm named after her. And it took me a while to figure this out, but when I was a little girl, everybody used to call me everybody's grandma. And I figured it out because she was the great-great-grandmother, so she was, my grandmother's grandmother. And and we were all her descendants, so she was like everybody's grandma. And because I had that name, that's why they called me that too. And that's a picture of her. Actually, I cropped the photo because she was with her daughter, Mary Willard, but I just wanted to feature her in this slide. And then to the right, you see Donawak Austin Hammond wearing one of the weavings that Santos had done, and that's according to Richard and Nora Downhauer. In one of their books, they talk about Santos being the weaver there, and it's included in the exhibit. So if you haven't seen it, take a look at that. It's exquisite, and I can't look at that robe without hearing Austin Hammond speak in my head. You know, he had a distinct way of speaking, and he actually used that robe to win a case. There was a land dispute, and he was being challenged for having his smokehouse on this land that was being claimed by somebody else in hands, and he took it to court, and he wore that sockeye robe in court, and the magistrate ruled in his favor, and so I just am so in awe of that happened. But he talked about it on in that film Hashuka, and he said his uncles told him that when he gets in a situation that he should wear that atu, that regalia, that robe. He said, his uncles told him, we're not going to be there all the time, but if you wear that robe, we're going to be with you. You know, and you think about all the ancestors who have worn those robes in the past and how that energy just stays with it. You know, in the, this is kind of a side, in our church, sometimes we, if somebody's ill, like recently, we took a handkerchief and we prayed over that handkerchief and sent it with my brother up to Anchorage for my other brother who's getting cancer treatment. And so, you know, we pray and all that good energy and good thoughts go into that. And when we're weaving, it's the same principle. Those good thoughts and good energy stay with that weaving. And so we're taught as weavers to always approach the weaving prayerfully, not to go there when you're angry or in a, you know, in a bad mood, or, you know, because those thoughts and those feelings will go into the weaving too. So just had to bring that up. And this was my great-grandmother. And she was alive when I was born, but she didn't live for very long after I was born. Mary Willard, her Flannat name is Akla, and our daughter Katrina is named after her. And she was very talented and prolific weaver, and I don't know how many of her robes are out there, but like this brown bear robe that she's shown with there. I think I saw one at the last celebration, somebody dancing with a brown bear robe, and I thought, I wonder if my great-grandmother wove that one. And the one on the right, the beaver apron, I think that's owned by the Deshitan in Angoon. And that little one up above, the little baby eagle robe, it's a little different than the one that we have in our family. She wove for my oldest brother, Ralph, when he was just a toddler. And we still have that in our family collection, but it's now on display in our Heritage Center up there in Klukwan. Mary Willard, as was her mother before her, Santos, were all of the Kagwantan clan and the Wolf House, originally from Sitka, our family, but when Mary Willard was a young mother, she moved to Klukwan with her husband, James Kachkanuk, and our family has lived in Klukwan ever since. Okay, next slide. And this is my grandmother, who was Jenny Warren. Her Tlingit name Ka'it, but she also had the name Kahani. And this is the double killer whale robe that she wove for her missionary friend, Mayrold Parker. And that little blanket was repatriated to our family after Mayrold Parker died. While she was still alive, she had it on display at the Sheldon Museum in Haines, and she left written instructions that it was to go back to our family when she passed. And we weren't quite ready for it because we hadn't built the Heritage Center yet, but after the Heritage Center was built, then it returned to Klukwan. And Jenny, as I said, she was my first teacher, Jenny Warren. Well, when she was teaching me how to weave, Jenny Flannat got wind of it. And I'm just going to go to the next slide because we're talking now about Jenny Flannat. Jenny Flannat got wind of it, and so she decided she's going to come down and help out. And so I had my grandmother on one side of me and Jenny Flannat on the other side of me, and the loom in front of all of us. And then they got in an argument. And Jenny Flannat wanted me to use the drawstring join, and my grandmother wanted to use the dovetail join, like this little steps. And Jenny was saying, the string. And my grandmother was, she was just shaking her head no. And I was trying to disappear in between them. But I think Jenny Flannat really wanted to have a part in teaching me because my namesake was one of her teachers. And so I think she wanted to kind of repay that. So that's what I think anyway. Jenny Flannat was, you want to tell that, Jones? She was married to a man named John James who had the Tlingit name Knock, and that is my husband's name. And when Jones, he used to drive the senior citizens van in Haines and Klukwan for many years, like 30 years, and Jenny Flannat was one of his regular passengers. And one time he was, escorting her into her house, up the step towards her stairway. And she saw me approaching on the road, and she hugged Jones's arm to her, real close, and then she laughed. She laughed like that. And Jones's grandmother heard that, and she told Jenny, you better quit that or Santos is gonna lick you. But yeah, and she talked about Jones being her husband, and to this day, her daughters and her grandchildren call Jones Grandpa. So yeah, she was a dear lady. I had this job as a young person, and maybe that's how I know Nyla. I was an outreach worker, and I'd go to all the elders and see if they needed help. It was a job through Tlingit and Haida way back in the day, and I'd go visit Jenny, and she would tell me stories while I cleaned her oven or, vacuumed her floor or whatever. And it seemed like every story was back in 1906. It was a big year for her, I guess. Anyway, she taught me some things because she would be working sometimes when I visit her, and she showed me how to spin, and would just let me watch her weave sometimes, and I wasn't weaving at the time, but she knew I had started to learn, and she told me, don't feel bad, Santos. You got little children to take care of. but when they're grown, you're going to go back to it. And sure enough, I did. So she holds a special place in my heart. And she was a very prolific weaver. I understand there are like over 50 major pieces attributed to Jenny Flannat, so that's exciting to hear about that. And this wolf blanket, I see that all the time. It's brought out in Haines and Klukwan for parties a lot, and amazing. I think she wove two with that similar pattern. Like I mentioned, in 1985, she taught at the Raven House in Haines. They had that Jilkaat weaving symposium, and there were 17 women who attended that, who learned from her. And now, you know, there's weavers throughout Southeast, and I think maybe not all attributed to Jenny, but I think she started something there with that weaving symposium. And when she died in 1985, I wasn't weaving. You know, I had started learning back in the late 70s when my grandmother was still alive, but I wasn't at the time weaving. I think that was the year our youngest child was born, and so I wasn't weaving yet. But when she died, I just felt like a big hole in my heart because, you know, Klukwan was so well known for weaving, and there was nobody weaving then. And I felt such a responsibility to keep that tradition alive for Klukwan. And so thankful that Ruth Casco had approached Cheryl Samuel to come and teach weaving in Klukwan. And she was very persistent, and Cheryl gave in finally, and she came to Klukwan in 1990, I believe. So it was like 5 years after Jenny died, and she taught. We made little bags that were maybe about like this big. And then she came back the next year, or maybe 6 months later, and then we wove projects that were legging size. And then she did another one, and we wove first raven's tail leggings, and then Jilkaat back of the tunic leggings. And then we heard about the hands across time weaving that the women weavers here in Juneau were doing. And we heard about the robe that was being woven in Sitka, another group project. And so some wheels started turning in my head, and I saw in the Raven's Tail book that Cheryl wrote about the Lynn Canal robe, the robe that was collected in Lynn Canal in the 1870s, I believe. And it had been cut into two pieces. One was made into tunic, and the other part was made into dance leggings, and they were in two separate parts of the world. But somebody had, I don't know if it was Cheryl or some artist that worked with her for her book, pieced it together to show what it would have looked like if it was still whole. And I saw that, and I read the history on it, and I thought, that would be a good project for Klukwan. Well, we were novice weavers, though. We didn't really know what we were doing yet, just having woven a bag and a couple pairs of leggings. And she was taken back by my request, and she was somewhat reluctant to take it on. You know, a big major piece like that, you can see there's a lot going on in that weaving. But we convinced her that we would do it, we would stick with it, and so we started it in November of 1992, 2 years after she'd started coming to teach, and we didn't finish it until November of 2000. So it took us 8 years to weave it. But in that time, I went from a novice weaver, not to a master, but at least intermediate level. And it really meant a lot to us. And a lot of people think, well, healing robe, it's some like I was telling you about the prayer cloth. Well, it's not that same idea with this piece. It's more the idea of throwing off the cultural oppression, the years of cultural oppression. It wasn't okay to be Native for many years. It wasn't okay to speak our language. It wasn't okay to have potlatches. They were outlawed. And, all those things. Having my parents' generation having their mouth washed out with soap for speaking Flingit. Those things weighed on our people. And when I was going to school here in Juneau, took a class on the Holocaust at university, and I learned how the Jewish people were being healed from the generational trauma of the Holocaust through these Holocaust museums that were springing up in different parts of the world. And I got my wheels spinning, and I thought, we need something tangible to address that same generational type of generational trauma that our people went through. And so really that's what the healing robe represents, the throwing off of those years of cultural oppression and embracing who we are as Native people and being proud of that. And so that's what that's about. And you see the women in this picture. There's 4 of us holding the healing robe in progress. On the left there is Edith Jocko, and next to her is Adrienne Bocart, who is not Native. She lives up the highway from us, but she came alongside to help me. And I think it was fitting that we had Native and non-Native sitting together working on this for the healing of our people. And then myself, much younger version of myself, and then Cheryl on the right. And Ruth was not in the picture. She was one of the weavers who saw it through to the end. We started off with like a dozen women, but weaving is just not for everybody. It takes a certain type of personality. You have to have a lot of patience. You can't just sit there and, okay, it's done. It takes months, in this case, years of work. And it's just not for everybody. So a lot of those people dropped off. But Ruth Casco, Edith Jocko, Adrienne, and myself stayed with it. And Cheryl came periodically up to the halfway point, and then she left us to finish it. So we did. But that was a good way to teach us, to get us to where we can do everything that needed to be done. So we knew how to do it, and then just left us to do it. So that worked out. And that was a group project. So, I was one of the main weavers for this, but there were other women, and they learned too. Ruth, Casco, Edith, Adrienne, myself. And then sometime after that, I should have wrote down what year this, I think this subsistence robe group project, I think it came off the loom in 2010. But I'm not positive. It might have been 2011. And this was inspired by a proverb our elder Joe Hotch told us, this Tlingit proverb, Ha-chasegu chanu ha'atchai, which means our life is close by our food. And so we wanted to, portray that in a weaving. And so it has a lot of like animal footprints, berries, fish, waves, hooligan dip, all these different features that have to do with our subsistence way of life. And you can see all the women who are, so, you know, I'm showing this to show that the legacy of weaving is continuing in Klukwan. So myself on the left, and to my right is Mary Jane Valentine in the striped. The woman right behind her is Mardell Gunn. She helped us with the dyeing process. She wasn't actually weaving, but she was part of the project. And then to Mardell's right, a young woman, Brittany Snow Williams. She lives here in Juneau now, but she was living in Klukwan at the time. And then Lorraine Casco, who's woven a number of pieces on her own. And then Lorraine's niece, Denise Morris. And then behind Denise is Brittany's brother, Harley. And then there's Adrian and my sister Kimberly, Alicia Morris White, Marcia Hotch, and Carrie Durr. So all these women are weavers out there in Klukwan now. So the legacy is continuing. The legacy of weaving is moving forward. And then we had a Wise Men Group project, and this was inspired when I went with Jones. We went to the University of Pennsylvania and got to see the Shotridge collection there and all the baskets. They have so many cabinets full of baskets. And so that inspired a lot of the design in this weaving. And Louis Shotridge, his Tlingit name is Stuaka, which is my brother Tony's name. And it means astute one. And all the time, you know, maybe you all have heard of the Wise Woman program in Search. And the men always feel left out. Why isn't there a Wise Men program? So we wove the Wise Man robe. And you can see the different women who worked on there. Kimberly, and behind her is Leanne Converse. And then top right, Lorraine Casco and her niece, Denise. And then Mary Jane Valentine again. And then myself and Kimberly removing the Wise Men robe. And then that robe was given to the Klukwan Jilkaat Kwaan dance group. And it's worn by Daniel Flannat all the time now for every performance. What's going on here? Let's try this. Okay, and then when Clarissa Rizal and Terry Rothkar passed away in December of 2016, they were both 60 years old, and I was 60 years old. And I thought, you know, when I get older, when things slow down, I'll take on an apprentice. But then when they passed, I felt like, oh, maybe I don't have as much time as I think I do. And so I felt really motivated at that point to start really teaching some younger people how to weave. And so I was able to get a grant through the Native Arts and Culture Fund to take on an apprentice. And that was Carrie Valentine Durr. Carrie is Edith Jocko's daughter, who was one of the weavers on the Healing Robe. And so I had the privilege to work with Carrie, and she chose to weave the Diamonds robe, and just a child-sized robe. And that weaving is for the dance group too. And you can see in the photo on the right, we're putting it on one of the younger dancers, Michaeline, who's wearing it in the photo there, the middle photo. Well, next to the right photo, second to the right. And you can see I'm wearing that. Yeah, I said that. Yeah. And I'm wearing that Clara Benson tunic when we're putting it on. So it was neat to have this very old weaving welcoming the new. Okay, and then after Carrie, even while Carrie was still weaving her project, I was able to take on another apprentice through a National Park Service grant documenting traditions or something. I can't remember what they have different grants through the National Park Service. And this one, we actually filmed the process of me teaching Sherry how to weave, and that was fun because she's very shy and she wouldn't want to look at the camera when we were filming. But Jamie Kapzik did the filming, and so every time we got together, Jamie was there taking some footage, and then I took photos too, and Jones would come and take a photo, and she designed it. I mean, I worked with her, but she chose the different design elements she wanted. And this is called the Thunderbird Sisters robe. Sherry has, I think there's five girls in that family. And so she chose the sisters pattern for the borders. And then the lightning pattern at the top, she had read somewhere that every time that the Thunderbird snapped his eyes shut, that there would be lightning bolts. And so she wanted to have the lightning pattern there, and then she chose the tattoo pattern for the middle. And it's just so gratifying to see the satisfaction of these women when they finish, these younger women when they finish their robes. So pretty exciting. And to be a part of that, and what it means to their families too. It's just a great privilege, actually. And one thing that happened after, I'll go back to that previous slide. Carrie, her boss, his mother passed away, and it's a small village, we're all close, and Carrie brought out her weaving to put on her boss's mother's casket. Without any prompting from me, she did that, and I was so proud of her, because she knows, she totally gets it, what the significance of the weaving is. And these are my daughters. When Steve was introducing me, he said that the weaving legacy spans 4 generations, including my daughter. No, it's 5 if we include my daughters. And they've woven small projects so far. Jenny on the left is wearing my most recent robe. That's the Generations robe. And she's got a weaving on the loom. And Katrina's woven smaller projects too, and she just moved home, so I'm excited about the opportunity to work with her in the days ahead of us. She's got a house in Klukwan, and I think she's gonna be there for a while, so I'm excited about that. So Jenny on the left, Katrina on the right. Final pitch. If you want to know more about me or my weavings, you can visit my website, www.lanihotch-northwestcoasttextilearts.com. And this is the weaving gallery from my website. So you see a sample of the different weavings. And I mentioned my Berners Bay. You see that kind of teal colored with the three, I don't know if I could, can you see that? These three right here. Those are, this is the Berners Bay weaving, and these are detail shots of it on either side of it. And that was to show, when we opened up our Heritage Center, we have this big map of our ancestral land, and we wanted to have different art pieces that we commissioned, and this shows our southern boundary. Is the middle of Berners Bay, and I think the Taku clan owns the northern or the southern half of it. And so you can see, like with the sockeye robe and the herring rock robe and the Berners Bay weaving, how the weaving shows ownership and connection to the land. So, good job, that's it. Thank you.